Because of radiation, people have become infertile and now are ready to do anything to preserve their species. This is the movie Tides, and it will make you think seriously about our future. The Earth has become unfit for sustaining life. Now people live on the planet Kepler. Sometime later, people go on a first expedition to Earth, and in 10 years, they go one more time. A pod with 3 astronauts descends on the water. They are the members of a second expedition. Unfortunately, because of the tide, one crew member dies on the spot. Only 2 crew members survive, a young woman named Blake and a man named Tucker. He survived because Blake managed to put an oxygen mask on him underwater in time. After the ebb, the pod is washed ashore. Tucker learns about the death of the second female astronaut. Another tide is in 6 hours. All information about Earth needs to be collected within this time frame. Tucker wants to get up, but screams of pain. Blake is forced to do the recon alone. The man stays inside the pod. Blake sees a horseshoe crab, which means that it's still possible to live on Earth. Then the young woman sees a jellyfish. One of them stings her. Tucker informs his colleague that a storm is brewing and she needs to return to the pod urgently. Blake is enveloped by a thick fog. The man launches a flare so that the young woman can find her way back to the pod, and at this moment he hears some strange noise outside. The hatch opens and Tucker shoots at the unknown enemy. Blake runs for her life, but she finds only footprints on the sand. Someone has captured the crew member along with the pod. The young woman hears Tucker screaming and notices a group of people dragging their pod. In a minute, she gets captured too. The heroes are thrown into a shallow well and a grate is placed over them. Tucker is injured and the young woman begs the indigenous people to give them medicine. They throw her a rope and Blake climbs out. She is led to an injured native. One of the native women orders Blake to treat the poor thing. When the young woman searches for medicine in her pod, she notices that the natives had destroyed all the equipment. Blake treats the injured native and at the same time hides one syringe for Tucker. The young woman is placed back in the well. Tucker has lost too much blood, that's why he takes poison in order not to suffer. Blake remembers her childhood. Her father went to Earth on the first expedition and gave his daughter a box of matches as a farewell gift. The tide comes in and the well fills up rapidly. The young woman is about to drown, but the native whom she treated rescues her. All the people rush to the boats. Blake is treated as an enemy, that's why she gets tied to the mast. The young woman watches with curiosity the life of the natives. They look rather normal. Also, there are lots of children here. Blake recalls her past again. Her father told her how humans had ruined Earth. Before flying to Kepler, people installed weather stations on the planet, and finally, they received a signal from one of them. In the morning, Blake is placed back in the well. The young woman sees her biometer in the hands of the local children. She begs one of the girls to give it back to her, but instead, the girl throws her some can. Using pictures on the walls of the well, Blake explains to the girl who she is and where she has flown from. Turns out radiation made all people on Kepler infertile. The girl agrees to help Blake and tells her her name, which is Myla. A bit more time passes. There is some noise coming from the outside. Several children and a mother with her infant are urgently placed in the well. The sound of shooting is heard outside. Blake sees that the attackers kidnap Myla. The people in the well manage to escape unharmed. Blake gets out of the well. Lots of bodies are scattered all over the camp. She sees a woman collecting her belongings. Turns out this is Myla's mother, and she is going to rescue her daughter. Blake follows the woman and tries to learn who attacked the camp. They hear Myla scream and see the captured natives being loaded onto a ship. Blake asks the woman not to use the weapon, because she only has a flare gun. The woman doesn't agree to this, that's why Blake knocks her out and shoots a flare into the sky in order to distract the kidnappers. Seizing the moment, Blake swims to the ship and goes aboard the ship. There she finally manages to find the biometer. She sees one of the crew members wears a jacket with a logo of the first expedition. When the attackers go back on board, Blake hides in the prison along with the other captives. In some time, the ship arrives at the destination and everyone is led outside. Turns out they have arrived at a cemetery of giant ships and the attackers want to dismantle them. All the captives are lined up. A local overseer comes down and starts sorting them. The man notices Blake's rifle in the basket with the stolen goods, and then he sees the young woman herself with a token around her neck. The overseer takes her away with him. There, Blake sees a little boy. Evidently, he is an indigenous child. At this moment, the member of the first expedition enters the cabin. This man's name is Gibson. He knew Blake and has known her since she was little. The young woman says that she needs a biometer. She wants to send a message to Kepler stating that people on Earth can give birth to children. To do that, the biometer needs to be connected to a special transmitter that is on the pod of the first expedition. Gibson says that it's impossible. The locals, whom Gibson calls Mud, have destroyed the pod. Besides, they took the life of Blake's father and the lives of several other people. The indigenous boy calls Gibson his father and gives Blake a model of a space shuttle. The young woman says that because of the radiation, all men and women on Kepler have become infertile. Gibson says that then people need to be brought from Kepler back to Earth. To do that, they need to build a protective dam to shield themselves from the tides and hostile natives. Gibson shows the young woman a giant wall and an unfinished dam. Alas, the natives always prevent them from finishing it. Blake is led to her private cabin. She remembers her father and the matches he gave her again. In the morning, Blake takes a shower, and after that, she notices that she is menstruating. That's very strange, because she can't have children. The young woman is brought new clothes and taken to a classroom where local children sing a song for her. Myla is brought there too. Children ask Blake lots of questions about her life on Kepler. Blake returns to Gibson's cabin and chats with the same indigenous boy. His name is Neil and he is Gibson's adoptive son. The boy shows Blake a tiny tree in a pot on a windowsill. Blake notices that the boy describes the tree the same way her father did. Neil says that Christopher Columbus told him about the tree and now he lives somewhere in the engine room. Blake asks the boy to show her the way to this strange man, but Neil says that he is not allowed to go there. Blake takes a map of the ship and a torch and ascends to the lower deck. Gibson catches up with her near one of the cabins and asks her to forgive him for lying to her. Turns out it was Blake's own father who led the native revolt. He fell in love with one of the indigenous women and joined the natives. Because of that, he had to be isolated. Gibson opens the door and Blake hugs her father for the first time in many years. However, she immediately accuses her father of betrayal and storms out of the cabin. Blake finds a functioning weather station and wants to send a report to Kepler. Gibson promises the young woman to help her find her biometer. In the evening, the man invites Blake to a family dinner. His wife says that he saved Neil's life. During childbirth, the umbilical cord wrapped around his neck, and Gibson performed a C-section on Neil's mother right in the middle of the ocean. He saved both the woman and her child. Suddenly, the light goes out. Someone's screams are heard. Turns out the natives are attacking the ship. Myla's mother throws herself at Blake. She demands to be taken to her daughter. Blake leads her to the children's bedroom, but then armed guards show up. The overseer grabs Myla's mother and drags her away. Blake learns that this woman's name is Narvik. She manages to tell Blake that only girls get kidnapped. Blake goes to Gibson's wife and demands that she explains why only girls get kidnapped. The indigenous woman asks her to keep silent, but Gibson decides to disclose this unpleasant secret. The thing is, the inhabitants of Kepler need a good and high-quality gene pool. The local women are in their 40s and even 50s. Besides, the flight will take a long time. This is why they need the local girls. Blake really dislikes this idea. The overseer Paling comes. He is a native who joined Gibson. The man brings Blake's bag, but there is no biometer in it. Gibson is enraged. He says that at dawn, Narvik will be executed. When Blake leaves, Gibson sees Mila's toy in Neil's hands. The biometer is hidden inside the toy. Blake returns to her cabin. Mila hides in the closet there. The protagonist promises the girl to find her mother. Paling knocks on the door. He wants to search the cabin because one of the girls is missing. Blake hides Mila and opens the door. Not finding the girl, the man starts harassing Blake and pushes her against the wall. Mila screams out of fear. To save the girl, Blake kisses Paling. At this moment, she pushes a capsule with poison inside his mouth. The man slides down to the floor. Blake and Mila head to the lower deck and find a room with the captives. Mila reunites with her mother and Blake releases all of them. The heroine runs to her father's cabin. Turns out Gibson is already heading to the weather station. Blake sees Mila's toy on her father's table and realizes that the girl had the biometer all along. Blake says that Gibson is wrong. There is no data on her fertility in the biometer. Turns out it's not necessary. The thing is, Gibson's son is his biological son rather than adoptive. The man needs to be stopped urgently. Blake runs out of her father's cabin. She sees the former captives escape and helps them. In the fog, the young woman sees the same functioning weather station and swims right to it. Gibson is already there with his family and he is going to send data to Kepler. Blake points the rifle. Gibson grabs a weapon too and says that he will fire a bullet at Neil. The boy's mother tries to stop the man, but he fires a shot. The woman falls. Blake drops the rifle. When Gibson sends a signal, Blake jumps right at him. They fall into the water and Blake squeezes his neck with her hands. Blake loses consciousness, but Narvik rescues her. On the ship, Blake gives Neil that very box with matches that her father once gave her. The people finally return home.